everybody and welcome on today's video. Today it's the 1st of April and I'm not going to do any stupid, not stupid, prank or joke because, I think other people are much better in this than I am. But today I'm going to talk about fusion, which is a joke to some people, but okay. So why fusion? Why do I like it so much? Why do I do it a whole lot? Well, you can buy a tree, a finished tree. It will cost you a lot of money. You can start with a Yamadori. Now Yamadori, you hear a lot Yamadori, it's not because you dig out a little tree out of a field or a wood that you have a Yamadori. A Yamadori is supposed to be a tree with a lot of natural character, but whatever, you can dig up a tree and start your bonsai with this. You can start with a seed, that's nice too, and then work slowly on the roots, on the branches, on the trunk and so on, and you get a nice tree. I like fusion. Why do I like fusion? Well, because it gives me the opportunity to do a whole lot of work and create a tree in, a couple of years that is really quite impressive if it works. Because not all trees do that well with fusion. Let me give you some examples. So to start, we have a field maple fusion here that is listed in a whole lot of videos. There's a series on this tree. You can look it up on the channel, and if I don't forget, I will post a link in the description. The soil is mounted up to here, which is way too much because this moss is holding it in position, but in a couple of weeks I will brush out this soil, and then we'll have a look at the root base, which is almost touching the rim of the pot here, of this wooden box that I made also in a video. And as you can see, this looks quite nice. Is it a success? No, not really. Why? Because I messed up. I couldn't keep my hands off this tree, and so it didn't work as fast as it should. But I think that now I'm good to go. Also, one thing that was not good, I used a wooden trunk inside the fusion, and it started to rot and cause all kinds of problems on this tree. So don't use wood as a structure for your tree. That's one thing. But maples are a really good species. They fuse. The whole top is fused and other parts. But that's the maples okay. Wooden structures not okay. Let them grow. Don't touch for a couple of years. That's one thing. Privet. Really nice. You can work with cuttings. Won't cost you a whole lot. I mean, I bought a couple to replace some dead specimens in my hedge, and it cost me $2, and with everything that was growing on that one plant, it was 1.5 meters. I can make this. So this is really a cheap way to make something nice. It started on a foam trunk, which is much better. And yeah, I hope that in a year or two, all these, there's a spider here somewhere. I hope that this whole thing is going to start to fuse. I have not much experience in the fusion, but I think it's going to be okay because I have some parts that are fused. So privet, really nice. This can be achieved, I think, in 5-6 years. No problem. And this is a Pom Granite. Probably my oldest fusion project, which is budding out. I told you this is the beginning of April. Doing okay now. Wide root base. All the trees were started from seeds, and then of course some died. But with Pom Granite it's not a big problem because you can take a whole lot of cuttings. They root like crazy, and then you can continue and add more trees. So this is starting to become nice to look at. Now, do they fuse? Well, yeah, they fuse, but not that fast. So my advice here is to let them grow out a lot, cut back, grow out, etc., etc. And while you're doing that, you can always start working on some branches that you let extend a little more than others. And I think that in a couple of years it is possible to achieve this. I also have Carpinus fusion trees, Japanese maples. I intend to make trident maple fusions. I have, of course, my ficus fusion project. Well, different fusion projects. I have a whole lot of cuttings growing everywhere. Tuja, yew trees that I'm going to use to make fusion trees in the future, because I really believe that it's a fun thing. But why am I telling you all this now? So this is a little oak, and this little oak I think is certainly 3 or 4 years old, and it looks fun. I did a video on it not long ago. I don't know when this video will see the light of YouTube, but it will probably someday. And this tree I think is about 3, 4, 5 years old maybe, and it is well, almost as thick as my pinky, which is not gigantic, because, well, oaks, they don't grow that fast. But it is a nice little tree. I'm very happy with it. I'm going to start the ramification now. But, you know, a big, strong oak with a massive trunk, well, that's something else. So I decided to make a fusion tree with oaks. Now, I've learned a whole lot of stuff during the fusion years. I've started this almost 10 years ago. Lots of people did it also with really nice success. I'm thinking about Sid Pavey, the late Tony from Tony's Bonsai, and then I think that Ryan from Horton Bonsai did a few. Well, probably a whole lot of people, but okay. So a few things that I learned. Don't use wood as a structure. I also used a whole lot of these foam trunks, which were quite nice, but there's a problem with these ones, with these shapes. I mean, if you plant all your little trees around it, you will end up with a big trunk, which is okay, and then you have to start working on your branching all over the place, which is complicated because the branches need to have a certain thickness to be realistic, and well, it's gonna be difficult. So with the privet I did it on a different, I used a different method. I just used a wooden structure for the base. Now what this allows you to do is you take all your, this is going to be the 3 trees, you can take your trees, and then because you don't have to follow the whole foam trunk, you can get 2 together to make a first branch, and then another one to make another branch, etc., etc. Of course you need more than 3, and once you have the height, you can start bundling some of the trunks to make the new branches where you want them. And of course you can add a little bit of structure if you want, but that's not for the first 2 years. So let's go. In this pot I have over 20 seedlings of oaks, and they are not thick, they are just something between 2 or 3 millimeters sticking out of the ground, but I know with oaks they're always a little thicker at the root base. So they've been here for 1 year. I planted these acorns exactly a year ago, and I'm going to start with these ones. I have, well, a little more than 20, so I thought with a foam trunk of this circumference, which is not enormous, but a good size for me. I don't want gigantic trees, I don't want too small trees, I want something in between, because, well, you have to lift them one day when you're 75 years old, you know. And yeah, well, anyway, they will grow and get thicker. So I think this is going to be a good size for my fusion project. And I think that I planted these guys on a plastic, but I'm not sure, I didn't film anything. So what I'm gonna do now is get this out of the pot, see what I have, clean up all the soil around it, give a little snip in the taproot so that I can, that they start to make roots not only on the taproot, because that's what you don't want in the end. And yeah, well, it's gonna be a little bit messy, so let's start. Okay. I noticed that I also have a little field maple here. Like I said often, these are the weeds in the neighborhood. I'm hoping to get this whole root ball out in one piece, which will be safer for the trees. Well, that's a good start. Okay, and now, well, it's just a question of cleaning up this whole thing. As you see, well, most of the acorns did it. Oh yeah, there is a plastic here. So I used a couple of plastics, I think. Well, let's clean this up. Yeah, I knew this was going to be a messy operation. But yeah. Okay, so that's the first ones coming out. And yeah, well, it's gonna take some time and some cleaning up of the whole thing afterwards. But okay, it's part of the fun. And once that this first messy disaster is over, I'm gonna plant this in less muddy soil, because, well, that's all that I had, probably. Well, all that I wanted to spend. You see, there are different plastics here. I don't know how much exactly, but the idea was that the roots were going quite straight into the soil, so that I could use them to make a fusion tree afterwards. So I'm going to clean this up completely, save my little field maple. Not that I really need field maples, but you know, like I said before, these are all living things. Please have some respect for living things. So I will clean up this terrible root ball here, and then I'll be back. These roots need to be washed because, well, there's mud everywhere. It's been raining quite long. I was mentioning a couple of channels in the beginning of this video, so that's and a channel that I love to watch and that is not very well known is the channel of Guy Watson, Bognor Regis Bonsai. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, because he always says it very, very fast and it's difficult for me to understand. So Bognor Regis Bonsai, Guy Watson, does really nice things. He's such a nice guy also, and he's the only one in the entire world that bought a CD of mine from Bandcamp, which was very nice of him. So yeah, I also recommend his channel because he does really nice things with his trees, has a whole lot of interesting stuff going on, so certainly a good spot to visit if you want to see more good bonsai content. So I'm going to finish cleaning this up, washing the roots, and we'll be back for the assembly. Well, first for the root cutting, and then we'll see. So I spared you all the cleaning up of the trees and the pruning back of the roots. And well, you see I have two little bundles here. These ones, well, I don't think they are gonna work in the fusion, well, because well, I don't think that this root is ever gonna be an acceptable root. Of course I can try to wire this, and I probably will, but this is of course a tree that cannot be used at this very moment. So I'll work on these, probably wire the roots, because I do that sometimes. And then we have acceptable root bases. I always trimmed back a portion of the big taproot. That you have to do that on oaks. So this is acceptable because this can be a part of a radial root base, as you might see here. Of course, well, the tree is not exactly above the root, but you can always add a little tree here, and so on and so on. So I still think that this is a reasonable size for my trunk. I have a couple of very nice roots. So this is a little bit strange. This is probably a tree that hit a portion of the plastic. So this is of course a good one. So I can use this. And of course I'm going to try to get a nice flat root plane here. Now the problem when you do this is how can you hold all these things together? Well, there are different possibilities. None is a good one, but I noticed in the past years that using a little elastic helps. But of course you have to do that in the spring when there are no buds opening, so you can put a tree here. And it helps just keeping it somewhere where you want it. Yeah, so I'll have a look to see if my foam trunk does well, has the right circumference to host all these trees, and then, well, I'll be back to see how this can be continued. So yeah. Well, I didn't count them, but there's quite a lot of trees in here. So the elastic really did the job. It's still quite weak construction, of course, that's obvious. Now, I've seen people doing a fusion and then trying to strangle everything so that it fuses faster. Now, I don't think this is a good, well, using raffia, I did that also. Using that vet tape or all these things. And you can of course do that when you try to fuse the upper part, but it's not really helping when you're doing the roots, because, well, the roots, you know, once that this is planted and that the roots are well anchored in the soil, they'll start to grow. And well, they're not going anywhere, you know, they only can grow and anchor themselves in the substrate. And yeah, so there's absolutely no use in strangling this. Now you see there's quite a whole of empty spaces here, and well, that means that this thing is not going to fuse this year because, well, there's no contact, but it doesn't matter. I just hope that everything grows well and that these plants get stronger, and when they get stronger, well, then they will grow, and one day there will be contact, and then they'll start to fuse. So now the only thing that I'm trying to do is open up this root base so that I have a interesting root flare once these trees start to grow. And I can assure you that this is already quite difficult, so don't be too greedy on the result. Just be happy if your trees are doing okay and are growing, and try to separate them evenly. I also noticed in the past projects with fusion that if you are constricting these trees too much, they are not growing as well. If they are touching each other, well, some moisture will not get away, and then you can have rot on the trunks, and that's of course something that you don't want. So the first thing to do now is to plant this, be sure that the roots are happy, and then hope that these trees have a good growing season. And for the rest of the season I hope not to do anything to this, because, well, it's just not the right time to do that. But the roots now, well, that's your main concern. I think that's quite okay. I'm gonna plant that in a deep pot with good draining soil, and try to arrange the roots as well as I can. And I have a whole pot here of trees that, well, are just not good enough to put into this fusion. But I'm gonna plant them because they can help close some gaps here. And once you have a good root base, well, you don't care about all the roots, you just want a nice radial root base, and well, when these grow, these will be quite impressive. So, okay, I'm gonna plant this. So a big pot, and I drill a couple of holes in that. Holding the drainage screens in place. Okay, so that's done. So now I don't need a whole lot of detail here, like so. I'm going to plant this, well, rather deep. And now comes the tricky part, but if you prepare well, this works. But it's always difficult to get the trees in the pot and the soil covering the roots. So what I'm going to do is try to open all the roots up without destroying the flare that I have. And then it's difficult to get the soil here under, but you know, it takes some time, but I mean it's worth it to do it properly. So I'll be back when that is done. So I'm just opening up everything here so that the roots are spreaded as well as I possibly can. Need to tuck some of these in. So that takes time, but I mean, this is the whole purpose of these fusion projects. It's to get a really nice root flare, mature roots from the beginning. And we don't care at all at this point at what the twigs are looking like, because they're so thin you can always bend them, always shape them when the trees are growing. So I'm just arranging roots now, and then I will just cover it up with substrate and hope that everything goes well. It took about 20 minutes to get all these roots nicely radially sorted out and then fill up the underside of the foam with substrate. But yeah, it was an important moment. The elastic, as you see, is still here. I'm not gonna do anything about that. In a couple of months the elastic will become quite weak and brittle, and it will break. And I hope that in this time all the little trees will start growing, and well, that's all that I can do. So I'm gonna water this nicely now, and then all the little guys that didn't make it into the fusion, well, I'm just going to plant them, give them a good chance of growing, and who knows, they might become something completely different, or I might use them to include them in this fusion at some point. I don't know. Well, most of these guys don't have a good root bases. You see, for example, this goes up. Well, I'll see what I can do to correct that, and probably I won't correct anything because it's not going to be possible. But this could be included in a fusion, but not as a nice root base part. So, of course, I'm going to save them, plant them, and that's going to be my last job for today. But that's not really interesting. So I hope that you found this interesting and that you give it a go. That's all that I have for you today. Please like, subscribe, etc. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.